Why would someone as globally famous as Jungkook, a member of the world-renowned BTS, keep a secret for a decade? What could possibly be so personal, so emotional, and so deeply rooted in love that not even his closest bandmates noticed it? This isn't just a story about a global superstar. This is a story about a son, a silent promise, a sacrifice made in the shadows, and a secret that was never meant to be revealed. Until now, it all started with a simple interview. A journalist asked Jungkook, "Who do you think about the most when you perform?" Instead of giving a media-trained response or naming a bandmate, Jungkook paused. His eyes dropped slightly. Then, softly, he said, "Someone who never asked to be thanked." The internet lit up with speculation. Who was he referring to? A friend? A mentor? A lost love? The mystery stirred fans around the globe. But what no one realized at the time was that those 7 words were a crack in the dam, a quiet moment that would eventually lead to the truth. As the days passed, armies began combing through old footage. They rewatched interviews, behind-the-scenes clips, fan cams, even lyrics. They looked for clues, connections, anything that might explain that cryptic answer. And slowly, a pattern began to emerge. It wasn't one grand gesture that defined Jungkook's secret. It was a series of small ones, a consistent thread of gratitude, quiet respect, and emotional weight that seemed to follow him wherever he went. A gift handed discreetly to a staff member. A moment of stillness before a concert. A comment caught on a hot mic. "I hope she's eating well." What people didn't know was that these weren't random acts of kindness. They were rituals, acts of devotion. Quiet prayers turned into action, performed not for the world, but for one person, his mother. Every dream he chased, every risk he took, every late night in the studio, it was all part of something bigger. A vow he made to himself at just 15. A private mission to honor the woman who sacrificed everything for him. And that's where this story truly begins. Not with fame or fortune, but with a boy sitting at the edge of his childhood bed, watching his mother fold clothes after working 2 jobs, whispering to himself, "I'm going to change everything for you." That whisper turned into a storm. I end this chapter. We begin the unraveling of that storm. A storm that was disguised as calm. A 10-year love letter written in silence. And now, the world is finally ready to read it. The question that changed everything wasn't just asked by a journalist. It was asked by millions silently for years. And finally, the answer is here. Not in a song, not in an award speech, but in a decade of devotion that no one saw until now. To the outside world, Jungkook was unstoppable. The youngest member of BTS, a force of charisma and talent that radiated across continents. His name was etched into global charts, sold-out stadiums, and hearts of millions. But there was one place his name remained whispered, hidden, in the quiet of a small apartment in Busan, where his mother still lived in modest silence. It's easy to believe that fame makes everything visible. But the truth is, sometimes the brightest lights create the deepest shadows. And in those shadows, Jungkook hid a promise. He kept it so well that even the most devoted fans, those who tracked every live stream, every lyric, every Instagram post, missed the signs. It wasn't because they weren't looking. It was because Jungkook never intended for it to be found. When BTS debuted in 2013, Jungkook was just 15. He was wide-eyed, determined, and painfully aware of what his mother had given up so he could chase a dream. While other teenagers worried about exams and crushes, Jungkook was thinking about contracts, stage performances, and how to send his first paycheck back home. He never told anyone, but that first paycheck didn't go toward new clothes or gadgets, or even a celebration. It went to paying off overdue bills that had quietly stacked up in his mother's kitchen drawer. Medical costs, rent, groceries, all silently erased by a son who had only just started earning. Behind the scenes, he requested financial privacy. Not out of secrecy, but protection. He wanted his mother to live free of burden, not fame. He coordinated with big hit staff to ensure that any benefit she received came anonymously. If a new car showed up, it was listed under a company. If her rent suddenly stopped being a worry, no explanation was given. She never bragged. She never told anyone. She simply smiled more. And so did he. But not out of pride. It was relief. Every stage he stepped onto, every award he accepted, every choreographed smile, beneath it was a deeper satisfaction. Not that the world loved him, but that his mother no longer had to worry about heating her home in winter. It wasn't always easy. Fame is demanding. The spotlight doesn't blink. There were times when Jungkook would fly 14 hours for a performance, smile for fans, deliver the perfect note, and then collapse backstage, whispering to himself, "Just a little more. She's still resting." And there were near misses. Once, during a fan event, a question card asked, "What was the first thing you bought with your BTS paycheck?" Jungkook hesitated. Then he smiled and answered, "A speaker. I love music." Everyone laughed. But in the replay, you can see his hand tremble slightly. The truth was sacred, and it wasn't ready to be shared. And hiding his truth, Jungkook didn't deceive the world. He protected something sacred, something not meant for cameras or confessions. A relationship so pure it didn't need validation. But as time passed, that secret began to take on a new form. What started as a vow became a legacy. What began as protection evolved into inspiration. Because even if no one saw it, the energy behind his performances, the glow in his eyes, it all came from the same source. A son who never stopped being grateful. Understand Jungkook's music, his strength, his passion. You have to understand the depth of what he hid. He wasn't just singing. He was repaying. Every note, a thank you. Every step, a prayer. Every lyric, a coded message. The spotlight may have never revealed the full story. But now, piece by piece, it's finally being uncovered. And what it reveals is not just Jungkook the idol, but Jungkook the son. A boy who grew up on stages while quietly building a future his mother never dared to dream of. He didn't hide in fear. He hid in love. Long before BTS conquered stadiums and shattered global records, there were midnight phone calls that kept Jungkook grounded. Quiet, hushed conversations between time zones and tour buses. Calls that didn't include managers or producers, just a boy and his mother. In the world of entertainment, silence is rare. But for Jungkook, those moments were sacred. After encore stages and chaotic fan meets, he would retreat to his hotel room, switch off the lights, and call home. Not to talk about fame, not to celebrate another achievement, but to ask, "Did you eat today?" Those calls weren't just routine. They were rituals. It was his way of anchoring himself, of staying connected to the one person who knew him before the fame, before the lights, before the stage name. His mother never asked for details. She didn't care about awards. She only ever asked, "Are you sleeping well?" In the middle of the night, Jungkook would sometimes cry. Silently. Not from pressure, but from longing. Being the youngest in BTS came with layers of protection and affection from his hyungs, but even they didn't know that after every concert, his first instinct was to find a signal strong enough to reach Busan. During one particularly exhausting world tour, a staff member recalled seeing Jungkook sitting alone in a dressing room, phone pressed to his ear, eyes closed. No tears, just silence. He wasn't talking, they said. He was listening. That moment stayed with them. Not because of who he was, but because of what he needed. To hear her voice, the world saw his strength, his charisma, his power on stage. But in truth, his real strength came from those invisible lifelines. The kind that tethered him to home. To the sound of his mother's breathing, steady and comforting. Even when words failed, it wasn't always possible. Sometimes the schedule was so tight, he could only send a voice memo. Sometimes he'd just hum a lullaby he remembered from childhood and send it as an audio clip. It said everything words couldn't. "I'm here. I haven't forgotten." What the world didn't see What even the members rarely noticed was that behind every one of Jungkook's explosive performances was the echo of those calls. He didn't need to be reminded why he worked so hard. Every sweat-soaked shirt, every tired step, every vocal strain was born from those midnight exchanges. In an industry that celebrates showmanship, he kept this one thing for himself. He didn't post about it, didn't film it. It wasn't content. It was connection. A bond that stretched across years and miles, through sickness and fatigue, fame and isolation. When asked in interviews about where he found his energy, he often said, "Army gives me strength." And while that was true, it was also only part of the truth. Because the real answer, the one he never spoke aloud, was, "She's still waiting for me to call." On days when he was too tired to speak, she would simply say, "I know. Sleep well." And he would, because even in silence, her love carried him. Armies never heard those phone calls. But now, as the truth begins to surface, fans are beginning to realize that the most powerful moments in Jungkook's life weren't captured in high-definition cameras. They were whispered in the dark, in a language only a mother and son could understand. And maybe, just maybe, that's what made his performances so powerful. Because every time he sang, he wasn't just reaching out to fans. He was answering a call that started a decade ago on a quiet line between Seoul and Busan, saying, "I haven't forgotten what you gave up for me. I'm still making it count." Most fans admired Jungkook for his generosity, but what they never knew, what he never shared, was that for 10 years, he had been silently funneling a portion of his earnings into a bank account that no one else could touch. Not his label, not his managers, not even his closest friends. Only two people knew it existed, Jungkook and his mother. He opened it after BTS's first international tour, a time when his earnings were modest compared to now, but meaningful enough to begin something quietly revolutionary. While his peers celebrated brand deals and splurged on luxury items, Jungkook met privately with a financial advisor, not to invest, not to grow wealth, but to secure something deeply personal, a future his mother never asked for but always deserved. He named the account with a single Korean character, Hyun. It means virtuous, worthy, and sometimes hidden. Fitting, because the funds would remain untouched, invisible, accumulating over time like silent gratitude. What was it for? Retirement? A house? Medical bills? Not quite. Jungkook's plan went far deeper. He knew his mother would never accept help openly. She was proud, strong, the kind of woman who once worked 2 jobs so he could afford singing lessons. But she had dreams too. Once she had sacrificed the moment her son began to shine. Jungkook decided he would bring those dreams back. Quietly, without telling her, without telling anyone. Each payday, a portion of his check was split off and transferred into Hyun. He treated it like a promise. That one day, when she was ready, she could live not just comfortably, but freely. When he bought his first apartment, fans marveled at the design. What they didn't see was the second property, tucked away in a quiet coastal town, under his mother's name. Bought with the savings from Hyun. Fully paid. No cameras. No announcement. Just a handwritten note left on the kitchen table the day she first walked in. "For every night you stayed up waiting for me to come home. Now, this is your place to rest." She cried that day. Not because of the house, but because she realized just how long he had been planning it. "You were still a trainee when you started saving," she said through tears. He just smiled. "I wasn't saving money. I was saving time for you." The house wasn't large. It didn't need to be. But it had a garden. A real one, where she could plant the herbs she used to grow on their apartment windowsill. It had a kitchen designed to her liking, a reading nook facing the sea, and speakers installed in every room so she could listen to the songs her son had written without pressing a single button. Years later, when BTS took a short hiatus and the world speculated endlessly, Jungkook spent that time there. Not in hiding but in peace. Cooking with her. Tending the garden. Painting the walls with colors she chose. He even installed a projector so they could watch her favorite old movies together. The media never caught wind of it. The members never asked. And she never bragged. Because it was never about the money. It was about the intention. Every army knows Jungkook as the Golden Magne. Talented in every way, seemingly unstoppable. But beneath all that brilliance was a boy quietly building a sanctuary for the one woman who taught him love through sacrifice. What he did with that bank account wasn't flashy. It wasn't content-worthy. It was, however, the most Jungkook thing he could do, thoughtful, quiet, and deeply personal. And one realized, not even his mother, how long he had planned it. But now, as the truth comes to light, the world begins to understand that Jungkook's greatest success wasn't measured in trophies or streams. It was in the way he turned a decade of silence into security. In the way he gave back without ever needing to be seen. In the way he made sure that even if the world forgot her name, she would never forget how much she was loved, because while others built empires, Jungkook built a home. And he did it piece by piece, year by year, with a quiet promise hidden in the numbers. One day, this will all be yours. And now it is.